GearNetwork.com. This is a Gear Network production.
You're listening to Better Live Than Dead.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And welcome to episode number 23 of Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. I am your host, Ryan Wolfe, at WolfeBLTD on Twitter. Joining me on the IndyCar Media Hotline, just like last week, and just like almost all season, I'm hoping, Brayton Wilson, at BJ Wilson, WGR. How you doing, Brayton?
I'm good, Ryan. How about you?
I'm doing well. It's Tuesday. We've had a couple days to dissect this Bills loss. I guess not even dissect, more digest. Or get rid of the indigestion caused by the Bills loss. But before we get into that, just want to let you know you can obviously hear us over at betterlivethandead.com. You can hear us on iTunes, through Google Play Music, on iHeartRadio, and now through Spotify. So whichever, subscribe, follow, like, leave a comment, whatever, review, whatever you want to do. Just make sure you follow the podcast. That way you get the latest Trust the Podcast as soon as it goes live. Now, Brayton, as we mentioned, the Buffalo Bills were not ready for Sunday. It did not appear. They got their doors completely blown off, put back on, and then blown back off again. A 47-3 opening day embarrassment by the Baltimore Ravens. Right off the bat, Brayton, what are your thoughts about the game?
What a horrible 3-hour nightmare that we all lived and never thought it would actually happen. I mean, trying to watch that game was very, very difficult to do so, let alone trying to work the game and actually, continue to want to work the game. But, it was just unfortunate because I don't think anybody saw this coming. I know the weather was bad. I know that those circumstances were out of, the Bills' control. But, I mean, for Joe Flacco, a quarterback who has been for the past several years less than competent, he pretty much just walked all over the Bills' defense and the Bills' offense. Mind you, Baltimore's defense has been very good for the past several years. Nathan Peterman he was missing reads. He was not hitting on his throws. It was bad. And then Josh Allen comes in, and I think he does a little bit better than Nathan Peterman does, but it was still much of the same. The Ravens still brought the pressure, even though it was mostly their second team defense. But there's a lot of there's a lot of growing up. There's a lot of learning to do from this type of loss. It's a tough loss to take. It's an embarrassing loss. It's not going to cost anyone their job as of right now. I mean, the Bills would probably have to lose like this for most of the season in order to, really start making some dramatic moves. But I mean, the guys have got to the cliche that Sean McDermott's been using. They've got to watch the tape. They got to learn what the heck went wrong and learn from their mistakes, because their next opponent's not going to be any easier.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Sean McDermott kept pointing out, that people are kind of – it really sounds like, Brayton, you get a lot more of this than I do, obviously, since you work over at WGR and you do monitor calls a lot. But a lot of people seem fed up with Sean McDermott already. It's only been 1 week, but, I think he kind of miffed a few people when he said he needs to look at the tape before he has a true assessment of Nathan Peterman. Now, we'll talk about Nathan Peterman in just a moment, but I mean, it's crazy to sit there and I mean, you have people who, and I'm not going to name any names because that's just rude, but you've got people out there who were 100% for Nathan Peterman. And I guess if you're going to do it, that's probably the best way to do it. Just say, you know what, we'll go with Nathan Peterman and whatever happens, happens. And I almost kind of am annoyed already by people who are, I guess, participating in revisionist history, where they're saying, well, I never thought he was going to be good in the first place, despite the fact that, a mere week ago, they were talking about how great he's going to be and how great he looked in the preseason and all that. But, it really is what it is at this point in time. I mean, the one thing I do want to point out before we move over to our three big things, first off, Sean McDermott did not deny on Chopin the Bulldog a couple days ago on Monday that Nathan Peterman's last start against the Chargers could push him to be a starter this weekend in an attempt at redemption, where they just said, does that play into it? And he said, I won't deny that it plays into it. So there could be a potential for that. We don't yet know the starter for Sunday. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes, though. Really, for me, with Nathan Peterman, kind of a preface to the first three big things. his fast decision making in the preseason ended up holding onto the ball too long versus Baltimore, and it led to mistakes aplenty. And then one real quick thing before we do move on, and I probably should have, looking back at now, we're still kind of in the preseason on the podcast. Probably should have mentioned just right off the cut that the Bills have released defensive tackle Adolphus Washington, signed defensive end Nate Orchard, formerly of the Cleveland Browns. He was featured on Hard Knocks this season. Rather, I don't know the word I was going for with that. A lot. He was on there a ton. In 34 career games, Orchard has 5 sacks. He's expected to step in because we've heard that Shaq Lawson has an injury that may prevent him from playing, whether it's at all or just as much as he should be able to. Either way, Orchard may see some time this weekend. But Brayton, over to our 3 big things. Nathan Peterman, number 1, likely no longer a starting quarterback. If let's just put it out there right now, if Peterman was to be named the starter for Sunday, I would not be surprised. But looking at his stat line from Sunday, it is atrocious. And please do get your Tums or your Pepto-Bismol or whatever you may take for your heartburn. Get it ready because this is ugly. Peterman was 5 for 18 passing, 24 passing yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and he was sacked 3 times. Now, Brayton, one thing I want to do before I get your input on Nathan Peterman is give you some history. If there's one thing we can expect from Nathan Peterman, damn it, he makes history every time he goes out in the field. First off, per Sportsnet, Nathan Peterman is the first quarterback with a 0.0 passer rating on opening week with a minimum of 10 attempts since Earl Morrall, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, of the New York Giants did it September 19th, 1965. Also pointed out by Nick Veronica on Twitter, only 7 players in history have an interception rate above Nathan Peterman's 10.44% with at least 50 career pass attempts. None of those guys have played in the last 30 years. Now, Brayton, these names are incredible. You've got, let me just get a little closer to my screen here so I can read them. Kim McQuilkin, who played, it looks like 26 games. Randy Hedberg, who played 7 games. Wayne Clark, who played 40. Alan Pastrana, who played 5. Rich Campbell, who played 7. Terry Luck, who played 4. And number 1 with a 14.75% interception rate would be John Hufnagel. Before I wrote this part of the podcast, I had never heard of these 7 players. Unfortunately, for the Buffalo Bills fans' sake, we have heard of number 8. His name is Nathan Peterman. And Brayton, give us your thoughts on Nathan Peterman's performance or lack thereof from Sunday.
Well, I mean, certainly one of those things where during the preseason we were getting a little exciting because, oh, hey, maybe he's changed his ways, maybe he's fixed some of his issues mechanically, or maybe he's just making better reads. And in this game going up against Baltimore's defense, it did not appear that way. He held on to the ball too long. He wasn't making the right reads. He missed a few guys that were considerably wide open, and it cost him again. He threw 2 more interceptions, and I mean the one interception, both of them were to Calvin Benjamin, but the first one he threw to Tony Jefferson completely airmailed Calvin Benjamin. Mind you, he probably could have gotten up there and tried to, bring it down or whatnot. But I mean, it was such an easy interception for Jefferson. And then the second one to Carr, it was just a badly placed ball. And it really just got worse for him just because, oh boy, it's another interception. And he finished the day with only 5 completions and, of course, the 0.0 rating. So, I understand if the Bills want to keep playing him because they feel that Josh Allen's not ready to start yet, but you're going to have to start considering the fact that, all right, despite the fact that Josh Allen's not ready, he might have to go just because nothing's working at quarterback outside of what you already have in Nathan Peterman. It was sort of the same situation last year in Chicago where Mike Glennon was the starter ahead of Mitchell Trubisky. And what do you know, after 3 or 4 weeks of action, Mike Glennon can't get the job done. And I think Chicago at that point kind of put Trubisky in there knowing that he may not be ready, but he went out there and he just did the best he could and actually didn't play that bad. And now, at least in the first game that we saw this season, it looks like Trubisky looks much better than looks like he's been working on his game during the offseason, and he looks like he's got that potential to be a good quarterback. So, I'm kind of just sitting here waiting eventually for the Bills to make a decision on what they're going to do with the starting quarterback role. And I honestly can't tell you which way they're going to look. I mean, they may look to Josh Allen just to say, all right, we know this isn't working out, or they may say, you know what, we have to stick with Nathan Peterman because the free agent market for quarterbacks is not great. We already traded away one quarterback. We're not going to try and trade for another quarterback at this point. Or, they're just going to just sit with Peterman and just hope that it gets better somehow.
Now, as you mentioned, Josh Allen will point out too on our second of the three big things this week. Josh Allen made his NFL debut probably sooner than most expected. He was 6 for 15 in passing for 74 yards, sacked 3 times, but he also had 4 rushes for 26 yards. The thing here with the waiting until Josh Allen's ready, as you mentioned, Brayton, has been mentioned ad nauseum up to this point. You really wonder at what point in time, and I mean, I'm by no means ready to turn on Brandon Beane or turn on Sean McDermott, but at what point in time does this fall on them? I mean, because Nathan Peterman clearly is not an NFL starter at all. He might be a guy who can mop up or give you, even just mop up might even be too much. He might not even be an NFL quarterback. That's what it's really looking like at this point in time. I mean, you had AJ McCarron who ended up getting injured, and for all intents and purposes, I honestly think that if McCarron didn't get hurt, they may have rolled with AJ McCarron, but if nothing else, they would have had, we saw that they traded McCarron, but maybe they would have stuck with McCarron. They would have stuck with Peterman, but I mean, if Allen wasn't ready week 1, my thought process has been this, whose responsibility is it to make sure that there's a fail-safe in plan or there's a fail-safe plan in place? So if Nathan Peterman bites it as he did on Sunday and plays well below average, or I mean, up to par for him, but below average for most NFL quarterbacks, is it really, I mean, is it the GM's fault here for not getting the Bills to be as ready as possible? Or do you think, because I mean, we've heard this week too with how Sean McDermott's talking, he sounds very resigned to the fact that the Bills are probably going to be very bad this year. So does it seem like something where they said, you know what, we're not going to be good this year. It might not matter. We'll just kind of roll with it as we can. Because, the other thing too you have to worry about is that if you put Josh Allen and a la Mitchell Trubisky from last season, you run the risk of stunting his growth. I mean, we've seen it happen before where guys have come in before they're ready, and once they come in, there's no fixing it. I mean, you've started the clock when they're not ready, and then they peak, I guess, too early, and then you have a wasted draft pick. So there's a whole lot there, Brayton. I'm sorry, but first off, is the GM to blame? And are you worried about potentially stunting Josh Allen's growth if you put him in too soon?
I mean, there is a lot on that plate, so it's a lot of questions to be asked. But I mean, rightfully so, they have to be asked at this point, because what do you do about Nathan Peterman? Are you going to keep putting him in there with the threat that he's not going to make it through another game, and he's going to cost you more chances than he's going to create more chances for you? I know that there have been fans out there that have been calling for, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott to pay the price for this. But I mean, it's sort of one of those situations where, hey, you drafted a quarterback for a reason. You need a guy that you hope to develop into the franchise quarterback. And if he does, then, that's awesome. But there's always that possibility that he doesn't pan out. And I think it's just way too soon to already be, clamoring for McBean or whatever it is to be fired or anything like that. Yeah, sure. I mean, he didn't do anything to help the offense out with, the offensive line. I mean, the line is terrible. I mean, the loss of Incognito and Wood are huge, and you replace them with Russell Bodine and your backups from last year who weren't really that good in the first place. I mean, Vlad Dukas and Ryan Croy once again were just steamrolled in this game against Baltimore. And I mean, they're going to go against another front four in not San Diego, Los Angeles. With that,
take a lap.
Take a lap. Put a quarter in the swear jar. It's another front four that's going to be coming at the Bills, and they're going to be bull rushing the quarterback. This is just going to be a situation on Sunday where, do we put Josh Allen out there? Do we just, let him learn the ropes and let him, just continue to try and develop that way, to feed him to the wolves? Or do you throw Nathan Peterman out there, continue to do what you're doing? Or do you go out there and maybe sign a guy like Paxton Lynch, who you had in, before the season started, and for a visit? I mean, do you bring him in and just let him get some work in before you even throw Josh Allen out there? It's a difficult situation. I don't think you can necessarily blame the coaching staff or the management staff for what's happening at quarterback. Other positions, especially on the offensive line and maybe at wide receiver, sure. I mean, you could blame Bean for that, for not addressing that. But at the same point, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what else you could do at this point. You're not going to fire Bean and McDermott just like less than 2 years into this whole process. I mean, there's a reason why we call this the Trust the Podcast. We're trusting everything that's going on in Buffalo. And you know what? It got the Bills to the playoffs last year. And we can't be expecting this team to be a playoff team once again, especially with all the turnover that we've had, and trying to go with quarterbacks that, one's a rookie and the other guy threw 5 interceptions in one half last year and continues to really struggle to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I don't think it's right to blame anyone just yet. I think that, sure, you can throw blame around, but I just think that we all need to sit back. We all need to pop a chill pill and just relax a little bit. And it's going to be tough because this team is going to be bad. And I think that it's going to be worse than a lot of us thought it would be. But at the same time, you just kind of got to let things roll out.
I agree. I mean, at this point in time, you can go out and sign another veteran quarterback. I mean, the Bills probably should have went and grabbed a guy like Matt Moore before the season. I'm not sure of his status aside from the fact that he's a free agent. He's not on a roster. But a guy like Matt Moore is probably your best bet because, you can sign Paxton Lynch, but he's struggled. Another free agent like E.J. Manuel, that'll never happen, but it's funny to think about. And then obviously there's Colin Kaepernick, which people will give me shit about it on Twitter, and they always do whenever I tweet it. But honestly, at this point in time, I think my little niece Delilah could probably play better quarterback than Nathan Peterman, because let's just be honest, hashtag death ray for Bills QB. At this point, I know Colin Kaepernick won't get an NFL job because of the whole collusion thing that's going on, because he's got a good enough case that it's going to an actual trial. But, at this point, how can the Buffalo Bills – I guess the only way the Buffalo Bills can trot out Nathan Peterman again and for the next few weeks is because – again, look at the defenses. They played Baltimore. They got eaten alive. Not only the quarterback, but the offensive line, as you mentioned. There were more than a handful of holding penalties. And why are there holding penalties? Because obviously, when you get beat as bad as that line did, either you're holding and you're making sure your quarterback doesn't get killed, or we're going to have a burial at midfield for the deceased quarterback because he will be impaled into the ground. Even without Joey Bosa, the Los Angeles Chargers are still a very potent defense. And not to mention, too, they play Minnesota, they play Green Bay. If you can get to those 4 games without throwing Josh Allen to the Wolves, that's probably a good thing. But, at this point, I don't know if Nathan Peterman will survive another four drives, let alone 4 full games. But just looking at it, it's difficult to say because ideally, Josh Allen's the guy. Josh Allen's ready to go, but you want to be careful with him. And it's a very, very weird situation because, we all know Nathan Peterman's not a National Football League quarterback, but we have to stick through and watch him play. Maybe if he has another bad week, Buffalo will do something from there. But the one thing I wanted to mention too before we moved on to next week, thank God we're almost on to next week. It's Tuesday, almost Wednesday at the time of recording. We can finally move ahead to week 2. But before that, we have to have our weekly LaShawn McCoy quest for 11K. Update. LaShawn McCoy ran the ball 7 times for 22 yards on Sunday in what can be described as a stinker. He should have had a touchdown late in the game when Josh Allen could have handed him the ball and he would have walked into the end zone, but he decided to run the ball himself and got tackled for a 3 or 4 yard loss. LaShawn McCoy remains 29th all-time, 179 yards behind 28th place, as we mentioned before, Otis Anderson, who has 10,273 yards. Now, on to our look ahead brought to you by 26 Shirts. The latest Buffalo shirt, Volume 5, Shirt 23, is entitled SJ13. It's a fantastic looking t-shirt. Designed in conjunction with ex-Bills fan favorite Stevie Johnson, who will actually lead the charge this Sunday. And as Twitter has made the joke, he will by far be the best quarterback or the best Bills-related wide receiver on the field that day. That shirt is available through September 23rd. And the latest shirt beneficiary is a small child named Judson, who was diagnosed with T-cell lymphoblastic lymphoma in November 2017 when a rapidly growing mass in his chest started causing breathing difficulty. He quickly started a chemotherapy regimen that helped gain control of the cancer, but has left his immune system depleted. He spent 6 weeks of the summer in the hospital battling sepsis and a fungal lung infection that landed him in the ICU for his 3rd birthday. His immune system couldn't protect him. Judson is a tough guy, though, and he battled back and was able to come home from the hospital at the end of July. He continues to battle the fungal infection, which will be slow to resolution, but he also has been able to resume his cancer treatment, which was halted when he became so ill. He does all of this with a smile on his face and a no-defeat attitude that is truly remarkable. You can buy a shirt to help him out, or they're also over at 26shirts.com. Is a link to a fundraiser where you can just straight up donate money as well. Either way, get a great shirt, help a great cause as usual. 26 Shirts, we've all talked about it before. They are just fantastic and continue to be fantastic. But on to week 2 now. The Buffalo Bills versus the Los Angeles Chargers, the home opener for the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills opened as a 7.5-point underdog that has upgraded a little for the Buffalo Bills. They are now a 7-point dog. This is the first matchup between the Bills and Chargers since the infamous Nathan Peterman game. How do you expect the Bills to rebound after that embarrassing season opener?
Well, to be completely honest, I don't know. It's got to be a better defensive effort. I mean, it's Phillip Rivers, it's Keenan Allen, it's Melvin Gordon. I mean, it's going to be a tough challenge for the Buffalo defense, but they have to step up against the Chargers. I mean, yeah, I know last week against Joe Flacco and a Ravens defense that's been very bland and blah over the past few years. They got to be much better against the Chargers offense that is dynamic. They've got a quarterback who, despite playing several years in the NFL already, can still sling the ball a little bit. They've got some they got some good targets at wide receiver who, I mean, granted, didn't help Phillip Rivers last week against the Chiefs and not making any catches, but still, I mean, those guys are bigger guys. They can make catches. They battle well, and they got to stop the run game as well. So the defense has to definitely step up, and then on offense, whoever the quarterback is, we don't know at this point, but hopefully that quarterback could be competent enough to drive the ball downfield, get some points on the board, and at least keep things close. Because judging by this past week's performance, if that's not going to be the case again, we might not have another touchdown to talk about this week. I mean, the last touchdown came from Kyle Williams in Week 17 in Miami. It's just how bad things have been for the Bills, and you just got to hope that one of these quarterbacks, whoever it is that's going to start, or whoever the Bills decide to bring in, granted they have to learn a whole new offensive system when they come in, and that probably wouldn't work out so well. But I digress. Anyway, whoever the quarterback is, they need to be able to move the ball down the field and need to be able to try and put up some points, because if they can't, they continue to just tread in mud like they did last week, and the offensive line, continues to not be any help whatsoever, not only in the pass game but in the run game. The Bills are in trouble again. The Bills are in trouble, and I just don't see how Buffalo can pull out a win in this one. I think that the Chargers are a team that could easily contend for the AFC West and also contend for a possible Super Bowl for the first time. So, I just think that the Bills home opener, despite the fans coming out and being fully supportive and bringing great energy. I just think that the Bills aren't going to be able to put up much, and I'm going to call it right now. I think the Bills go another week without an offensive touchdown, or period, just a touchdown, and I'm going to say they lose 27-9.
That seems fair. I mean, I think if Nathan Peterman starts, we see Josh Allen at some point in time. You do realize that the fans, the one thing that I want to point out too that I forgot to point out before is I don't know how Sean McDermott can go into the room full of 53 guys who are all playing. It's their career. They only have a limited amount of time in this league. How could he walk in that room and say after Nathan Peterman threw for 24 yards that he's the best option at quarterback? Maybe Josh Allen isn't much better, but you know what? If Josh Allen struggles, go out and get a different quarterback, because obviously you don't want to ruin the kid's psyche, but Nathan Peterman clearly is not the answer. But with that being said, at this point, I mean, if Peterman starts, you're going to see Josh Allen, I think. No Joey Bosa is a huge break for the Bills, who Bosa has 23 sacks in 28 career games. He's a real deal. And his brother, too, is coming up, I believe, next year. Nick Bosa should be coming in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. The Chargers their defense didn't play great last week. They gave up 38 points, but the offense, they scored 28 points. I mean, this is the scary thing for me. The Bills defense struggled, and the Chargers are coming off a week where they had 547 yards of total offense and 28 points scored. So at this point, I'm going to try to be optimistic, but I'm thinking we're probably going to see like 27-10 on Sunday. And if, because at this point, I'm obviously not a big X's and O's guy. I'm with hockey. I try to be with baseball. I try to be with football. I try to be just a straight up fan. And I personally think at this point, the defensive strategy would be, okay, we're going to load the box up so we can stop LaShawn McCoy. And we're going to make Nathan Peterman beat us because we know he can't. And right there, you're going to shut down the entire offense. I mean, if Peterman starts coming out dropping dimes, I don't think it's going to happen. But if Peterman starts coming out dropping dimes, then maybe you can clear it. You can back up a little. But honestly, this Buffalo Bills offense is in trouble. This Buffalo Bills defense, if they don't get it together, they're in trouble. They got to get on the same page, man. We didn't talk about too much. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds had a good game. He looked solid, but lots of confusion, lots of broken plays, missed assignments. I thought you had that. No, I thought you had that. Just lack of communication across the board. So I certainly think that that at this point, the Buffalo Bills are just in a heap of trouble for sure.
Yeah,
and we're trying to be positive, but we can't.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to be positive, especially after the week that was. I mean, if you didn't figure out a way to overcome it now, then I really hope that you're okay come Sunday.
Well, hey, with that being said, that's a podcast for us. We have talked about the bad stuff. We're trying to be more positive, but I mean, hopefully we have more stuff to be positive about come next week after the Buffalo Bills take on their week 2 opponent, the Los Angeles Chargers. For Brayton Wilson at Brayton Wilson WGR, at BJ Wilson WGR, I apologize. I can't even read the stuff in front of me.
That's
or it's
fine.
Like I haven't said your Twitter handle 95 bajillion times at this point. I am at Wolfe BLTD on Twitter. Brayton, is there anything else you'd like to add to the podcast land this week?
Just be prepared for no more touchdowns for maybe the next couple of weeks here, because something's got to happen to the point where the Bills have got to figure something out on offense, whether it be trying to open things up or getting better play from the offensive line, because it might be a tough go for the next couple of weeks here. Check back in with us next week.
Yeah, check in. Keep tuning in, okay? We're going to be even more negative or positive. We can't promise until the game is played, but you know what? My wife made dope-ass chicken wing dip, and I'm the real MVP because of it. She's the real MVP because of it. I'm just the champion because my wife is dope. Pizza Queen is dope. Also, she's making again this weekend, and I'm getting pizza. It's going to be a good time. Even if the Bills lose, I'm not going to let it bring me down. So with that being said, this has been another successful Trust the Podcast. Please make sure, like I said, you follow us on Facebook, at facebook.com/BLTD Sports, at Wolfe BLTD, at BJ Wilson WGR. You can listen to us, like I said, subscribe on iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Listen over at betterlivethandead.com. With that being said, thanks again for tuning in. And as always, as the day is long, unfortunately, go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.